All right. Let's get into the running game. Obviously, one of the bigger question marks of this team is who's the starter at running back, right? We just talked about the quarterback scenario. The running back scenario is the same way. Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And Najee Harris, let's start with him. He was the RB23 last year, fantasy-wise. He's lost some weight this offseason. A lot of complaints about his efficiency, right? Being under 4 yards a carry, even though he was over 4 yards this last season. This is a contract year. The team declined his fifth-year option, so obviously they want to see what they get out of Najee, who is an older back already. He had some terrible games last year, some very forgettable games, especially early in the year. 4 out of the first 5 games they played, he was under double digits. But he finished the season strong, and so he had 9 games total in double digits fantasy-wise last year, 8 under. The major concern with him is that he used to be involved in the passing game. Jaylen Warren has taken over a lot of that work. So he had 1,000 yards rushing, right? Like 1,000 yards last season, 8 touchdowns. But it's the receptions. He only had 29 catches, 170 yards in the passing game. We're used to seeing Najee be somewhere like the 300 to 500 yard range when it comes to yardage, and somewhere around the 50 catch marker, and he was nowhere close. So that's the major concern I have with Najee Harris. Do I think he can replicate another top 20 to top 25 finish? Absolutely. Do I think Jaylen Warren is the starter? No. I think that Najee Harris will be the starter, and I think that Jaylen Warren will also play a very significant role just as he did last season. So my guts is that this is still a 2-man committee. One of them is going to have better day than the other. Like, I don't think it's going to be a thing where we have both of these guys performing at top 20 levels or one of them breaks out unless there's an injury. So part of why some of you are on this channel and watching right now is because you've seen my takes about Najee Harris and either agree with them, disagree with them, or may just be something that you remember, right? Like, we talked about Najee a lot last year. I still believe in Najee Harris, and I think that I will be watching this ADP very closely. Very closely. A guy that's motivated in a contract year, who's played well in the past. I will be watching very carefully to see if I'm going to be diehard Najee stan again, or if I'm going to move, if he goes in the try-hard category. The one thing I said I don't like, the catching, pass catching. I wanted to see that, and I think that that's gone fully to Jaylen Warren. So we'll see this offseason. We'll see. Jaylen Warren, RB22 last year, finished ahead of Najee Harris. Reminds me a lot of like Zeke and Tony Pollard, where Tony Pollard would come in and look really good at times as the backup, and then the starter was viewed as like the plotter and the touchdown vulture. Najee would be more touchdown dependent. Jaylen Warren is going to be more catch dependent, which is a good thing for PPR leagues. So he finished last year 784 yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns, 61 receptions, 375 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns. And, you know, he had 10 games in double digits, which is good, right? Like, his workload throughout the second half of the season slowly started to increase, and it truly became a backfield by committee. It was a true split at times. Some games we were getting Najee Harris looking like the lead back. Other times it was Jaylen Warren. So I like what Jaylen Warren brings to the table. I'm just not willing to put him over Najee. I'm sure they'll be drafted right next to each other. It'll be a pick your poison. Okay. One of them has more upside on a weekly basis. The other one's probably going to be more consistent. That first one being Najee, the second one being Jaylen Warren. Okay. I know he'll have some bigger games based on like big chunk plays, but the touchdowns are really what separates in fantasy. Najee Harris will have the first opportunity at those, in my opinion. So once we get down to the start of the season, we'll see who the actual starter is. If I had to make a decision today as of May, I'm putting Najee over Jaylen Warren. We'll see what the depth chart says game 1.